In this example, we're going to look at absolute value, opposites, and ordering with integer chips. So in the last example, we looked at these different chip representations. The positive sign means positive chips, and the negative sign represents negative chips. Now we're going to make other chip representations representing their absolute value and their opposite. So the absolute value of a positive number is its distance from 0. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 chips away from 0. So its absolute value representation, we know that absolute value is always positive because it's representing a distance. So the absolute value representation is identical. Okay. Now the chip representation of the opposite, a nice way of thinking of the opposite using the chips is you're using the same amount of chips but just changing all of the signs. So since this was 4 positive chips, the opposite will be 4 negative chips. Let's look at the next one. So now we have 6 negative chips. The absolute value is always positive, so the chip representation of the absolute value will be 6 positive chips. Now the chip representation of the opposite, well, that's changing the sign of all of these chips from negative to positive. So instead of 6 negative chips, we'd have 6 positive chips. And notice in this case, the opposite is equal to the absolute value. However, the opposite and the absolute value of a positive number are not equal. And now let's use integer chips to order numbers. So here we have these 4 chip representations, and we want to order them from least to greatest. Remember, we know negative numbers are smaller than positive numbers. So we can start here and think this is a negative and this is a negative. So we know that these are going to be smaller than, or less than I should say, these 2 positive chips. So when we have negative numbers, the more negative chips you have, remember the further to the left you were on the number line. So negative 6 is smaller than negative 3. So our ordering will begin with the smallest or the least number is negative 6, and our next least number is negative 3. Now moving on to the positive values, both of these numbers are positive. When you have more positive chips, you're greater, as opposed to here, when you had more negative chips, you were less than. So 4 is going to be smaller than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our ordering ends with a 4 and a 5. So notice we began with the negative values, more negative chips is smaller. Then we moved on to the positive values, and less positive chips is smaller.